First off, you have a toilet roll. Very important. You take a piece off, it's very good for blotting, wiping and cleaning up. Very handy to have. Our first bit of ink drawing is a dip pen. An assortment of nibs, different sizes, from fine almost mapping pen size up to quite a large one, broad, and then drawing ink. This is an acrylic ink, and what is very important with your ink is it must be waterproof, fade resistant and non-clog. And whenever you get an ink, a new one, or this applies to felt pens or anything with ink, do some drawing on a scrap of paper, leave it to dry, then try it with water. Occasionally the manufacturers get a batch where they mix the paints wrong or whatever, even with felt pens, and it runs. So always test a new ink to make sure it doesn't run. Next, to get some drawing done with your dip pen, you tend to work your line thickness with the one nib. So as you work, the pressure on the nib gives you the thickness of line, from face to fine line. And you use hatching, cross hatching, neat lines. When you draw, very positive. Don't overload the dip pen, otherwise it'll blot on the paper. Most cartoonists and professionals still use dip pens. They love them. I personally don't. I've got out of the habit of using them, and I really can't go back to them. Once again, you build up your picture as you would with a pencil, with cross hatching. You've got mountains in the distance, tree line, a little bit of shading to define it. Very nice thing to draw with, actually, a dip pen. It's all what you get used to. Tree, draw the individual branches. Go back over it to define your trunk. Always being careful not to overcharge your nib. Little house, draw the tiles on the roof. Once again, don't try and scrub with the pen. Draw neat line work, fine line work. It's practice. And this sort of thing I'm doing now is what you should do a lot of. Scrap of paper and just sit there doodling, coming up with different shapes. It's like driving a car. The more you do it, the better you get at it. You'll eventually be able to draw, and you won't even think about what the pen's doing. You'll be watching with your eye and reacting with your brain, and it'll appear like magic on the paper. And once you get to that, it's the most wonderful feeling. The next is a refillable drawing pen, which you can see is basically like a fountain pen. You've got the nib on there, which comes in different thicknesses. Open the pen, and you've got the syringe type filler, where you suck up the ink. Once again, you use on this drawing ink that is waterproof, fade resistant, light fast and non-clog. Next, pre-charged disposable sepia ink pens. This is a packet of 4. They're a fiber tip pen. You have 3 different thickness of tip, fine, medium and broad, and the 4th one is a brush tip, which gives you some very, very nice effects. There's the fine. Once again, always use hatching. Don't scrub. Very important. The 2nd to get your thickness. And the 3rd. And when you do a drawing with these, you use all the 3 sizes to develop your drawing and the thickness of line. That was the brush tip at the top there with those broad strokes. Once again, when you draw, neat, crisp lines, hatching, cross-hatching to emphasize your drawing. Go back over yourself. These are actually a sepia ink, which is very nice because it's earth colour, so it tends to blend into a picture. So when you're doing a watercolour, I tend to use brown inks always because they work so well as a background, they almost disappear into the painting and give it a body. This little barbed wire fence I'm doing there. Once again, chop and change your pens, bring up your thickness, use the fine one for the grain and the posts. Whenever you get new sets of pens or pencils or whatever, it's always worth sitting down with a piece of paper and spending an hour doodling, just trying different effects. You'll be amazed at some of the different pens and different effects you can get with them. Like any new tool, pens, pencils, brushes, you need the tool that fits the job that you're comfortable with, and you need to familiarize yourself with that tool. Practice really does help. Finally, we have a set of black pens, multiple sizes with replaceable cartridges. This set comes in 3 sizes with an internal cartridge, which you just basically push from the back and the cartridge slides out. You pop a new cartridge in when it runs out. Very, very, very nice pens to use. They are in black ink, but it is once again fade resistant, waterproof, forge proof apparently. You can use them for writing. They really are a very, very good pen, these. This particular set I've got is 0.25, 0.35 and 0.5 of a millimetre. And I've also got a fourth one which is 0.7, which is a big broad job. So I do find that tends to run out of ink very quickly. Big nib, and the 0.5 does the job just as well. Right, do a drawing with these. First off, you use your pencil and you sketch in a scene. Once it's plotted in, you start with your fine pen, work from the distance, the background to the foreground. Here I'm drawing a little country church set in a hilly landscape. Trees, once again, shading is always hatching. Don't get impatient. You're doing this for pleasure, you're doing it for fun. Take your time. Don't rush it. A rushed drawing never works. Here we go. Foreground vegetation in front of the church with the shading in to give it the 3-dimensional quality. Working the edges of it. And here and there your branches and leaves. Then come up with a larger size pen and draw your foreground, which is a stile across a hedge. Fine pen to draw in your grain, draw the leaves in, grass along the bottom, and then tussocks of grass across the meadow in front of the church there. Draw the tree. Once again, suggestion of leaves. You draw the outline of the tree and the trunks going up there. And you use your pens to darken your picture. What you really want to do is give it a frame of the trees, etc. in front to have a window, a vignette effect on a distant view. Draw your little conifers in. You remember what we saw earlier when they did the pencil conifer? The side away from the light tends to have the shadow. Pine needles. Remember, use your pen strokes to represent pine needles or oak leaves, whatever. Vary your movement of the pen. There's your hedgerow with the vegetation on top and the branches underneath. Larger pen. You build up each pen on your sizes to get the effect of depth to your picture and emphasis. There you are. Just keeps on building up layers and work all around the picture so you develop it as it builds right across the board and it relates to itself. So at the end of the exercise you get a picture that's well balanced. More shading, larger pen again. Grass in the foreground. It's amazing really, you can make nature appear so natural with a pen, and you're using lines, and nature is not comprised of lines, it's solid shapes. With subtlety you can do anything with a pen and ink, draw anything. Here we go with the shadow in the trees, with the light coming in from the left on this one. Little branches coming off the end of the trees, fine detail. And there you have your little country scene with a country church. And go back, add detail to it, put an extra house in there to make it more like a little hamlet or the vicarage next door. Define it a bit more. But you keep on building in relation to the foreground, the background, to create the whole.